Budget Committee meeting of February 4th, 2021. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Joe, can you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thor Ackrey,
Absent.
absent. Sherry Ackrey,
Present.
Dan Darren,
Absent.
absent. John Edwards, absent. Tom Healy,
Present.
Yes, Dave Perry.
Cynthia Isherwood. Cynthia Isherwood,
Muted, but she's here.
I see her, but she's muted.
Mike Janik,
Present.
Judy Jones,
Absent.
absent. Dave Perry,
Here.
present. Joe Souza,
Present.
Joe Schramm, present.
Cindy is unmuted. She's present.
Copy that.
Okay. Did everybody receive the minutes from 1/28/21? I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
All second.
Do we have unanimous consent?
So moved.
No objections, no discussion, motion carries. Okay, discussion vote on account 1070, Planning Board, page 5 in the
Hey, Joe.
docket.
Can I back you up a second?
Yes,
The minutes you just approved, what were they for?
Oh,
Sherry?
for February 4th.
February.
That's what it's on your agenda, is February 4th. You said January something, that's why I'm confused.
yeah, mine said 1/28/21. What did I do?
No, they were February 4th.
Yeah, I sent out the ones for February 4th.
So just amend your motion to reflect the right minutes.
I'll make that. Oops.
Oh my God, don't tell me I got the
Muted,
wrong
Joe.
number.
Dave, you muted.
Make sure everyone has the right minutes.
Unmute.
Right,
Okay.
Agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept February 4th minutes.
I'll second that.
Joe Schramm, would you please read off the agenda? Apparently I've grabbed the wrong agenda.
Yeah,
Not a
hang on a
problem.
second, Joe, I'll give you a copy.
If you
Wow,
wanna
that's
continue, Joe,
convenient.
go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck I pulled out.
Agenda item number 5, Town Council President will present council updates regarding fire department staffing and vehicles.
Okay, so the town council president actually is not available tonight like she thought. Unless she came in, Chris Cotta, basically we were just looking, I'll wait for Chris. Is Chris there?
He's making me a copy.
Okay, let him make him a copy and then we'll get him up to speed.
Here's the agenda, I gave you Bruce dropped me off the vehicle list.
Oh, great. Yeah, ask him for that. Okay. Man, I gotta check myself. I think my brain is going south. Okay. So the town council president was unable to attend, so we'll ask Chris to fill in if he would, and then let's get the fire chief in.
We have a few other things on the agenda before fire chief, but we could.
It said that the council president would update us.
Between Bruce and I, we'll bring an update onto where we are with so the staffing issues, there were a couple of requests. One was the deputy chief. And I'll let Bruce, delineate the duties and responsibilities he'd be asking for on that and what will be done with that. And the other one was the starting of bringing a couple of rotators. And the theory behind that, just so that you can get a flavor of what we're trying to do here. The state law related to overtime for fire department personnel will change in FY '23 to, at the end of their contract, at the end of the next year, to require the town to pay overtime. Right now they're at everything over 48 hours. It will be reduced down to 42 hours to conform with the state law. So in order to help mitigate that, that would probably require the additional about 4 staff minimal to try to resolve that issue. Was, instead of having it all come in 1 year, was to try to ease that bump and get a couple of rotators to start to mitigate some of the overtime now, by having somebody do the floating of taking on those positions. And then when we have to abide by the state law, it's an easier lift to get the other 2 versus trying to bring 4 in at once. So that's the theory behind it. Now, that's a policy issue of the council. It's not, we wanted to float this concept by the council so that they could get an understanding as to the train wreck that's actually floating towards us, and it's coming at us fairly quick. But, a lot of it's going to depend on where the council feels as to, where they believe the priorities are in the upcoming budget versus what kind of resources we have available. So that's the theory behind what the positions are. So I don't know if Bruce wants to add to that.
Okay, real quick question before. I seem to remember there was something in the contract that specified when we reached a certain amount of overtime, that minimum manning was supposed to drop back 1 man.
It is. While that in theory sounds practical when you're dealing in the middle of a pandemic and all the other overtime issues that we have coming forward as a result of this pandemic, and we're not doing that right now because we have a number of these issues are going to be paid for with FEMA monies. So there is a reduction that's going to take place in those accounts. There is a significant amount of extra CARES money that came into the town to help offset that have to be justified with public safety expenditures, which will also reduce that overtime account. So there is a provision in the contract, but the other part of that is, just so that you're real clear about this, is when I first took over here, that was an issue that came about, and there was some controversy about it. The real controversy, just so that, and I'm not going to get into any personnel issues of who did what or why, but there was a very minimal lack of accounting, let's put it that way, as to what was causing the overtime. So now every month there's a full report on what's actually causing it, whether it's overtime caused by family medical leave, whether it's by vacation, whether it's by sick, whether it's by COVID, whether it's by quarantine, whether it's by a whole list of issues. And there are a lot of them that cause it. Now, some of these overtime issues are caused by management. So if I don't fill a position and it causes overtime, it's my fault. It's not, but there are reasons and inhibitors to that, like, by the time I get permission from the council to actually hire something, do an advertisement, get it out, go through the vetting process, all that generates overtime. And that is not the staff's fault, it's administrative fault, is how this whole process works. So we have a far better accounting as to what those numbers are, as to where those numbers are generated from. And right now we have a significant portion of this that will be reimbursed either through FEMA or through the CARES Act. So there is a provision for it, but simply because that provision there is there, doesn't necessarily mean it has to be exercised.
Okay, we want to move on. Anybody else have any questions at this point?
I think Sherry had one.
And Dave?
Yeah, so I didn't know, did you want, before I start asking these questions, did you want me to make a motion to move the agenda item 13 up so we can hear from the fire chief and talk about this, or did you want?
What do you,
And then
Are there other people in the waiting room that have quicker budgets? Because we can,
They do,
Just-
yes, the harbor master does. So if you, the point was just to let Denise give us an update and then go through the other things real quickly and then get back to the fire chief so he doesn't have to wait
well, I
long.
think at this point we've had an update. I know the chief's ready to go, but I want to try to stick to the agenda and get the other people that are in the waiting room out quickly. 'Cause
The
their
only
budget-
question then I had for Chris was, that I would have asked Denise was, Chris, who controls the 2.3 million in unreserved general fund right now? Is the budget committee, are we allowed to touch that, for any current capital requests?
So I want to be sure I answer your question correctly. So the resources that are available that are unreserved, that have no restrictions on them, other than, and I'm assuming you're talking about something that's above and beyond the 3% that's required by charter,
It is.
and any other restrictions, that, yeah, that those funds are available for you to consider in your budget deliberations. Whether you use them for straight out capital, or they get factored into your whole formula and where you come up with the tax rate. So, do you use so much of the general fund reserve to offset taxes is basically what the question is. And yes, you have that ability. No different
Yeah.
than what we did last year.
I actually, I understand. I understand that part. I had actually asked Denise to put together, to send me some numbers for, which I can send out to the committee as well. But I had asked her to put together what was because she had mentioned that a sum of what was in the general fund had already been committed, and then what was unassigned. And non-spendable prepaids and stuff. So that's what I was talking about. I was just wondering, I wasn't sure since the casino money, which it may be a better question for her. I wasn't sure because of wherever the casino money rolled into, if the number she gave me included money that we could not touch. So I guess I better clarify that.
So I just for a point of clarity, and I agree that you need to ask all these questions, and I have no issue because that's the only way you're going to be able to put your budget together is knowing what pockets of money you can draw from. So the audit has been completed. It is with the Auditor General right now. And as soon as that gets released back to the auditors, we will set up a meeting with the auditors to come in and actually sit with the council to go through the entire audit. And it would be a good venue for at least few of the members of your committee who are going to be involved in the structuring of whatever pockets of monies are available to be involved with. So these questions that you have, there is a venue that will be coming up very, very quickly to help resolve that. And then if we have more questions, obviously we can have the auditors talk to you. There's a number of different ways we can get this information to you. I know that there's some speculation about how much money is out there. I haven't seen the final audit report and the numbers yet.
Right. I asked her for that as well. And she said that you're anticipating or hoping that the audit will be presented to the council on the 22nd.
Correct. So by right, it really needs to go to council first for acceptance because there is a management letter that's part of that. There are some other issues
Right.
they need to discuss. And so once the council has signed off on it, we're on our merry way and you'll have all the information you need. And believe me, we'll give you as much deference to whatever pieces that, audit that you need to do your job.
Dave Perry, any questions on this agenda item?
Yeah, Chris, that new law that's coming down on the overtime, that supersedes contracts, correct?
So in my opinion, it does, but that's a legal question. And I'm not prepared to answer that at the moment. There's another bill floating around right now that provides that contracts stay in existence as well if they're not resolved. And I'm not so sure that like the IAFF contract, while it might benefit the community, if we can't just simply sit on it and not resolve it. So I don't know if that works both ways or if it's just is more beneficial to the unions. And I'm not, it is what it is, but there is a number of different contractual provisions that the state legislature has passed. I do need to get both labor council and legal counsel to weigh in on those. But it would be my best effort that I will put forth with all the unions is to negotiate in good faith. So
When does that contract expire?
the IAFF contract will end at the end of 22.
Okay, so it's perfect timing.
So it is perfect timing. My understanding is that when it's done, that the way I understand it is that we're going to be obligated to comply with the 42-hour 42-hour-a-week work week.
I agree with that 100%.
So,
Well, I can speak on that real quick for, my understanding
Please.
of the way it works now. So that law is actually in effect right now. Any hours worked by any fire department, firefighters, EMTs, et cetera, over the 42 hours, right now, they have to get paid overtime for any hours over 42. Because this contract was signed before that law went into effect, this contract is kind of grandfathered in until this contract ends, which again, like the administrator just said, it's so June of 22. And then after that, it's my understanding that any hours worked by any Tiverton firefighter is going to have to, over 42 hours a week is going to have to be paid at time and a half. So it's really in effect right now, but just not for Tiverton because the contract was grandfathered in because it was signed before the legislation got put forward and voted on.
Thanks, Chief.
So I still have, I have questions regarding all of that. So do you want to wait, Joe, then for fire section?
Well, yeah, I think we should, if we're going to start getting into the operating budget especially, I think we should get an update and Chris delivered that and with a little extra.
All
So
right.
why don't we move on the agenda and knock these out real quick and we can get right back to the.
okay.
All right. So it was item 6, discussion, vote on account 2130, reevaluation, page 6. This is a restricted account. It's money we put in every year to pay for the elections and for revaluation, which is required by state, every 3 years, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So we do if I remember correctly, we do small, 2 minor revals, then we do a major reval. Is it?
Correct.
Am I saying that correctly?
Correct.
Where are we now? We on a major or?
We're finishing up a major.
Yeah, so this was the expensive one.
FaceTime video.
I'll entertain a vote.
I'll make a motion for, to approve line account number 2130 for reevaluation for $55,000.
I'll second.
Do we have unanimous consent? Any objections? Any further discussion? Motion carries. Number 7, discussion vote on account 2170, tax sale, page 7. I have a note that the tax collector explained this at the last meeting.
You did.
Motion to move $2, 2170 tax sale.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have unanimous consent? Are there any objections? Dave? Okay. No objections, no further discussion. Motion carries. Discussion and vote on account 2190, insurance, and account 2220, pension plan, page 7. All right, so where were we? Are there any questions?
I'll make a motion to move 3,154. Yeah,
No, this is the 1,409,674.
I thought we were doing tax sale for insurance first. No,
Am I?
well, I'll tell you what.
We just did tax sale.
I'm not in tax sale insurance.
Yep, you're right.
Move 3,154,000.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Any objections? Motion carries. It's count 2220, pension plan.
I'll make a motion to move 1,409,674.
Second.
We have a motion and second. We have unanimous consent. Any objections? Any further discussion? Motion carries. Discussion, vote on account. Okay. 2250. Did I jump? No, Social Security. And 2270, unemployment security. 2300, unfunded liability. Sick and vacation, page 7. So we started with 2250, which was Social Security.
I'll make a motion to move 625,000.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do I have unanimous consent?
Who seconded?
Mike.
Mike Jenick. Objections for discussion? Motion carries.
I'll make a motion to move 15,000 for unemployment security, 2270.
Second.
Do we have unanimous consent?
Yes.
Objections for discussion? Motion carries.
And I'll make a motion to move 100,000 unfunded liability, sick and vacation, account 2300.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Objections? Motion carries.
So point of order, did you do item number 9?
Yes.
You
It
did
was
the audit?
all item 8.
8. Yep, we did both in item 8 and we did 9.
I
Okay,
thought I did. And then we just did 10, correct?
Yes, and we just did 10.
all right.
Discussion and vote on account 3360, Harbor Master, page 11. Chris? Chris, you obviously approved this account?
I did. So,
Okay.
And the harbor master's here to talk about it, or somebody
Okay.
else?
I am. How you doing tonight?
Good evening.
So it's pretty straightforward budget, same as every other year. No increase on the salary or the assistant harbor master. Uniform and clothing still at 300. Communications, 750. Computer software is still at 1,500. The state required training is the same, and supplies and miscellaneous are the same, and then also boat operations, everything's the same this year. I did add in boat operations just to show you, since the trailer did let go, I mentioned that last year, we didn't want to go through with it. So now it's an extra $1,500 a year going just to having the boat hauled out and stored
Yeah.
every year. I did put on a capital expense, a new trailer. So that's all I'm really asking for this year, different from last year.
Are there any questions? Let me just say that I think I speak for the entire committee when we say that we appreciate your service to the town. And I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to move 30,235 harbor master.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. We have unanimous consent. Any further discussion, objections?
Thanks, Tyler, for
Motion
everything you
carries.
do out there.
All right, look, before you leave, can you address the Harbor Commission? And I know that you work well with them, so I know that their budget is still the same, but they're looking for the water quality testing that they were doing. I know we cut it out at the end of last year.
All right, well, let me,
That's agenda item 12.
Yeah.
Oh, it is, yeah, it is.
so it's discussion and vote on account 3350, Harbor and Coastal Management Commission, page 11.
Now, are you guys doing capital expenses later, or I was just curious on that.
Yes,
All right.
yes, well, capital's gonna be pushed back towards the end of our meetings till we have a firm grip on, revenue and things. So,
But
go ahead,
Tyler,
Tyler, if you want to talk about it.
well, yeah, this was.
No, it's just the capital expense is just a new trailer. I mentioned last year that the other one was ready to go and it let go, and so now I just have to take that money out of my expenses to store the boat when we should be hauling and storing the boat for free.
I have a question on the water quality testing. Exactly what is that?
Chris, are they still asking for the water quality this year?
They are.
Yes.
Because we cut it out at the end of last year. But I don't know exactly what that water quality does. And because I haven't been to all their meetings, but I'm assuming it has to do with the Grinnell's Beach area and the inner harbor.
I thought they said it had to do with the drinking water.
Well, so Chip Lawrence on the Harbor Commission, he has multiple test sites around town. And
Okay,
with that money, he goes to the different spots to try to find pollution and then try to find where it's coming from. I know there was an issue down in Sepauwett with a farm over there having pollution in the water. The water testing attributed to that. So that's what they use the water testing money for.
Yeah, I
okay.
thought I heard something different on that for some reason.
So this year we had to shut the beaches down, I think twice because of pollution. Is this what he's trying to test to try to find?
Yeah, so with his water testing around town, it helps narrow it down where the pollution would be coming from. That's what he's done in years past.
Okay. So I'm just unfamiliar with it. That's why I asked Tyler if he had any knowledge about it.
I have a question.
Yes, please, Mike.
So, Tyler, if they're doing testing for pollution, wouldn't this be something that the DEM would do?
I believe DEM does a different kind of testing. I'm not 100%. I know what they do with the testing, but it'd be more of a question for Chip Lawrence and Bruce Cox, the head of the Harbor Commission. Chip Lawrence he works at the college and for environmental stuff, and I know that's what they use it for. That's most I know about it.
I will entertain a motion to postpone this, to table this till the next meeting for an explanation.
I'll make a motion to table this until a future meeting when we can have the representatives available.
I get that.
Okay.
We had a motion and a second to table. Are there any objections for discussion? We have unanimous consent.
Table in the commission?
Yeah, to get an answer to your questions and ours
Okay. All
on
right.
what that money was for. All right, we'll move on.
So do you need any more explanation about the trailer so he doesn't have to come back when you do the capital? I mean, I think
I know personally, I heard the testimony last year and I thought we could probably find some money to buy one, but things happen. So we'll look in the end when we start doing capital, what we can afford. $1,500 to move it versus the price of a trailer. I don't know where we're gonna go, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, item 13.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you.
Silence.
Thank you very much.
Discussion, vote on fire department account 3310, page 8 and 9. Discussion of capital request, page 2. Chief, where you have the floor.
All right, where do you want me to start at? The payroll side of the budget is pretty straightforward. A lot of it, most of it is contractual as far as the salaries and everything. I can certainly go line by line or.
Well, I don't know how the committee feels, but I think we're really interested in where there's increases and why the increases are there so the public can understand why prices went up. So if you can, where you have, large increases and I also had asked you about, because years back, we've talked about turnout gear and air packs and different equipment. And I know all that stuff has, so the reason I was interested is because I don't want to see us like we did years past, put the stuff off to try to make the budget look smaller. And then next year end up having to double up on it. So anything you feel, you know, we're going to have to double up on next year, please put that on the table so we can look at it. Don't, if you understand what I'm saying, maybe you are already, but show us everything and then we'll do the best we can with it. If you understand what I'm saying. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to skip all the salaries. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Not really too much of an increase. I believe there is a 1% per contract, a 1% raise that the union gets, and well, that's not a whole heck of a lot. I did go up 25,000, 150 to 175 in the overtime. I believe that's what we asked for last year. It was cut back down to 150. I think that the 175 is closer to what we're going to need. Obviously, it's the overtime is one of those things you can never predict. Like the administrator was saying before, with FMLA, family medical leave, people get injured on duty, and you know, there is all the contractual stuff, the vacation time and such that creates the overtime. But a lot of it is out of our control. So I think the 175 is more in the realm of what we're going to need. The paid holidays, there was a jump in the paid holidays, and I can tell you. Oh, I have the wrong backup sheet here. I apologize. So the paid holidays, basically, it's 1 week. The guys per contract get 1/5 of a week's salary for 12 holidays throughout the year. There is the increase. So I asked for 2 additional rotators, also the deputy chief. So that's 3. That would be 3 more personnel that would have to get paid the holidays. That's what the increase is. That's why there's so much of an increase. So in that, longevity, educational allowance, EMS incentive. This is it's all contractual. Clothing allowance, the fire marshal inspections, that was my fault. I should change the name of that, the account name. It's not really fire marshal inspections. That's for the fire marshal's salary, which is by contract is at the captain's rate. So, clothing allowance, again, it's a contractual item. And then deputy chief, the 2 rotators, I can get into that if you guys are interested in that. I'm sure you are.
Before you get that, Chief,
Yep.
I'd like to ask a question about your the overtime. You're looking to bump it up to what was requested in 2019, 2020, but you came in below it at that point. And this past year was reduced again. Or the current year, can you give us some indication of where we're trending this year? What you're forecasting the end of the year for this current budget year?
So we're gonna be over 150 this year for sure. There were some circumstances at the very beginning of the year. We were down a fire chief. I was filling in for the, as acting fire chief, so that really took up. So with me being in the position of acting fire chief, my position had to be filled. So that took up quite a bit of overtime. We have FMLAs, we have a young department. They're allowed by law, by federal law, to take FMLA if they have a new baby in the house. So some of them have taken advantage of that. I will say that most of them have taken just a few weeks, a month or so. They're allowed to take 12 weeks by law, but I think a lot of them understand that, one, some of them don't have all the time, all the 12 weeks that they can take. But they also understand, as does the whole body, that the situation that we're in with the overtime account and everything. So they've been very good working with me and with the town with that. So it's tough. It's very hard to forecast where we're going with that. That's just one of those line items that it's near impossible to say how much exactly we're going to need, because there's so many variables that we just don't know. I mean, if somebody gets hurt on the job and they're out for 4 months, how do you plan? You know, you can't really plan for that. I mean, I could certainly put in, I need $250,000 in overtime just to have that insurance there, but obviously that's not gonna work. So that's one of those line items that are extremely hard to forecast for.
Chief,
All right.
All right, Dave, then Sherry.
if some of that money, and I think Chris spoke to this before, I know year to date, you used 110,000 and they only got 39,000 left for the rest of the year, but some of that's coming back from COVID, right?
Yeah,
Chris?
some of it will be reimbursed by FEMA and some of it's going to be reimbursed by the CARES Act. So
Right.
just so I can explain to you what some of that CARES money is, our revenue projections for the year included X amount of dollars for motor vehicles, let's say. So let's say we budgeted 1.3 million for motor vehicles, and the state in their infinite wisdom decided to take and cut that back to, let's say, $1 million. And I'm just using round numbers for just so that you understand it. And they replaced the other $300,000 with CARES money. But ultimately, and those have to be justified with public safety expenditures. They ultimately provided more than that $300,000 in CARES money, which also still have to be justified with public safety expenditures. We will be justifying those with fire department overtime to help offset that, so that when that revenue comes in, it will be set aside against those expenditures. And whatever FEMA reimbursements we also get that are directly attributed to this account will also be a wash against that account. Now, I'm going to complicate this a little bit further because while we're going through the next 8 weeks of providing vaccines, we're going to incur quite a bit more overtime to do this. And we've been assured by FEMA that those are all reimbursed expenses. So, you know, we're doing everything we can to keep our overtime to a limited amount. Some of the things that the chief didn't address about overtime were early on, before most of the staff got vaccinated, there was a number of instances where we had to quarantine staff because of COVID. There were a number of times that we've had to backfill positions because of that. So there are a number of issues that are related to this COVID issues that we have expended an extraordinary amount of overtime to get to. We were hoping to not be too much over the 150, but at the end of the day, we might be able to get back to it with the reimbursements. I don't have the full calculations yet on where we're going, but it's been a real struggle with this because we're trying to provide the appropriate services for our constituents. And believe me, of any department, they are seeing the lion's share of being exposed to COVID than any other department. I mean, the police has their share too, but they are out there every day bringing these people back and forth to the hospitals with COVID issues. So it's been a pretty good testament to them of trying to use all the protection they can to mitigate this. And we've been fortunate in some respects that it hasn't been worse than what it really has been. So the issue has been, a dance all year long as to whether or not we were going to get any of the monies, whether it would be FEMA or CARES money, to resolve some of these issues. But we are on track now to rectify some of this with some reimbursements.
Okay, and I have another question on, Chief, in your salary account, it looks like, you have no third class, coming up. So you took that 150 from last year and moved it into the second class, and that's why that 250,555 is there. Correct?
So we do not have any probationary or third class in this upcoming year. I don't have last year's budget right in front of me, but yes, they move up in class.
Right, so the 153 moved up to the 105, and that gives you your 250.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And, like Chris said, I want to thank you guys. My wife had to go in Sunday night, and they did a tremendous job. Thank you.
Hopefully
Yeah.
she's okay.
But yes.
Okay. Sherry?
Yep, okay.
Sherry, you're muted.
You were talking, and all of a sudden you muted.
I don't know. I clicked on mute. So I'll say it again. I have a couple questions that have to do with the rotating men as well. I know you've been that you talked at the town council about some stuff, but has there been a breakdown done between the cost of providing that increased manpower and their pay and benefits versus not, or having basically the extra people, the extra guys that you have, or not extra guys, the guys you have right now and their overtime? So I mean, has there been like a a breakdown that to see whether or not it is more, if it is more beneficial to have the guys that we have now working overtime or bringing these other guys on, and will that actually decrease overtime? Do you understand? Or did I make that clear? I don't know.
You were cutting in and out a little bit, to be honest with you, but I think basically what you're asking is if we ran the numbers with all the numbers to see if it's cost effective to hire these.
Yeah, basically, is it better to pay? I guess what I'm saying is I assume that the guys that are already in the department, right now count. I would say, that they actually, because of the way your schedule runs, that they actually depend maybe on that overtime. So I'm wondering, will these new positions as they're rolled in actually, obviously, will it actually reduce the overtime hours that the department is creating completely? Or will it, obviously, I just want to ask if the guys that you have now are actually, not going to be receiving overtime, and then these guys are going to kind of take up the slack, so to basically reduce those overtime hours.
So the two rotators that I'm asking for this year,
Yeah.
the way it would work is they would sit down with me rather, on a monthly basis. We would go over the upcoming schedule as best we could, with the scheduled vacancies. Obviously, if somebody gets sick on the overnight and they're supposed to be at work the next morning, we can't schedule that. But so I would sit down with these two rotators. We would go over the following months or the upcoming months vacancies, and they would be plugged into those vacancies. So they would not be overtime that would have to be paid. They would be, those two rotators would be filling those spots, as opposed to hiring back a firefighter on overtime. to do it, to fill that spot. And then my plan is for the following year to hire 2 more, to bring the total number of firefighters up to 32, to have 8-man shifts. I believe, like the administrator said before, talked about before, as soon as we get to the end of this contract, there's a decision that the town has to make. Do we want to stay status quo? If we stay status quo, the overtime budget for the fire department, again, not knowing exactly how much we're gonna need every year, but it's not going to be less than 500,000 a year because of the overtime that the regular hours that the guy's going to be working. Plus the overtime that we have every year anyways, because of vacancies, those 2 things combined, it's going to be at least 500,000 in overtime. If we stay with the 8 men, or if we stay status quo how we want right now, we could have the guys drop down to a 42-hour shift as opposed to the 48. But if we do that, it's going to be 7-man shifts with 7-man minimums. So anytime anybody's out for any reason, whether it's
Either way, the overtime's gonna go through the roof.
it's going to skyrocket.
Yeah,
So
well,
that's
and I
what I'm
guess-
trying to.
Yeah, I guess that was my point, was that I just was saying, if the logic is that 4 more people will save money by eliminating overtime, then why not hire enough people, so
So-
that you mitigate that?
So the issue boils down to, in FY '22, the contract still provides for that the staff can still work the 48 hours and not have to be paid overtime. So instead of coming in FY '23 with a $500,000 problem and trying to resolve it at one time, we would look to try to source that by kind of, blending it over the 2-year period so that it's not such a big hit. There might be some overtime savings in FY '22, but there'll definitely be no overtime savings in FY '23 because all you're doing is covering the 6 hours with the 4 men for every shift. So that's what it's going to take to cover those 6 hours. So either you don't hire those bodies and you pay it all at overtime, and it's going to be a $500,000 issue. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So in FY '22, because the contract is still in effect, you might have some mitigating issues for overtime, but you wouldn't be able to count that moving forward. It's only going to do it for that one little period of time that you're going to have these 2 guys on. So would there be some savings in FY '22? There may be, but at the same token, if you're taking a look at the trend of where we are versus where we're budgeted, we're struggling to make that piece work now. So
Yeah, it wasn't my intent to say hire them all now. I just was kind of trying, yeah.
I'm just
I
trying to
just was-
explain it. That's,
Yeah, I just was trying to ask, the question. I realized really it has to do with their contractual negotiations that are upcoming too. But just that if anybody was looking at, the analysis between the 2 and if it makes sense to continue to pay overtime the guys we have now or add people.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Bruce.
You're welcome.
Yep, Dave.
Going back over the years, there are times when it's worthwhile paying overtime. Because when you put the people on, not only pay their salaries, now we got to pay their holidays, longevity, education allowances, incentives, clothing. But this is not one of those times. This is the time where I think he needs the men.
well, there's another mitigating issue you need to look at as part of when we get these guys in. Depending on where we pick them up from, if they're not trained at all, they have to be going through firefighter 1, firefighter 2. They got to learn their ropes. They got to learn the town. So by the time, what the chief would like is to at least have 2 guys who are part of the complement that aren't going to cause more overtime. When you bring in new staff, you have to train them. You're actually, part of that training is also additional more overtime as you're training them. Even though you have the bodies, they're not complementary yet because they don't know the town. So it takes a while to get that, they got to get their training in, and they got to get their, be acclimated to the town as well.
Chris, I know we did, some years ago, we did
No,
some
I can't.
lateral transfers from, other departments or guys who had retired or.
I know exactly where you're going, and believe me, the chief knows exactly too, but you know, we've been fighting this issue with a number of other towns right now. I think Middletown just hired 8 or in the process of hiring 8. There are a couple of other communities around us that are in the same boat.
Portsmouth,
Trying to
9.
resolve some of these issues. So it's a very competitive issue coming to the end of this contract with others who are in the same boat as us.
Well said, Dave. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Chief, where do these rotators, or how do they impact your current contract situation? Do you have any provisions in the contract where existing firefighters have a right to overtime before positions that are added would alleviate that?
I don't believe so. I don't believe it would be a problem bringing more people in. If I wanted to get, if I started cutting firefighters, that might certainly be an issue, but adding firefighters to the budget, I don't believe would be a problem. I mean, that would be a question for legal, but.
Yeah, so I guess my question would be, has it been discussed? And I'll direct that towards you, Chris. And if it's
It's been discussed with legal, and it's also been discussed with the union. This would help mitigate some of the overtime issues and the contractual provisions that the union would embrace. And they would also be looking forward so that this doesn't become an issue in the future. I'm not going to speak for them, but at the end of the day, we would have to get all the parties involved to discuss this thoroughly. But like I said, as we discussed this initially, this was conceptual to see if the council will even entertain it more than, and we will go down the road of rectifying it and trying to get it into a cohesive package that everybody's agreeable to. But we needed to get at least the initial phase of having the council discuss it, that they would at least entertain the notion of going forward to get as much factual information and all the legal issues resolved as we move forward. I don't think it's a big legal issue. I've talked to our legal counsel about it as well. I think this is a doable situation that would not become a contractual matter for us to fight.
So
I'm sorry.
has the council approved of the budget as submitted?
No, they have not. They have not voted on this budget yet.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question.
All right, Sherry was next. Then
No,
you
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
My
Joe, go
question-
ahead.
Yeah, go, Joe.
Chief, when we send the individuals for Fire 1 and Fire 2, after they complete their training, are they contracted with the town to work a certain amount of years before they can leave or transfer?
They are not right now.
So they could go through this and then leave?
They can, and they have. I think this issue has been brought up before. I think with the police department, I'm not sure. I don't know if legally we can force them to stay here.
I know other towns.
I'm not a lawyer, so I would certainly have to talk to legal on that, but I don't believe we can force them to stay here.
I think we had talked about like having them sign a contract to guarantee they would work for 2 years, or they would have to reimburse the town for the cost of sending them to school or something like that, but it never really went in further.
Yeah, I think North Providence has something where they have to stay for 5 years.
It's something that council would have to deal with. Sherry, go ahead, then I had some questions.
No, I was saying my question got answered. I'm good.
Okay, if I could ask you to first explain the structure of the fire department, how many platoons we have, how many men are in each platoon, and then your total staffing, please.
Yeah, sure. So we're a 28-man department, 29 men, including the fire marshal. But for the actual the shifts, we have 4 platoons, 4 shifts, platoons, if you will. It's a little complicated. There's 7-man shifts. Okay, we have myself. Obviously, I'm not a part of the shift, but there's the chief. There's a captain per shift, 1 captain per shift. He's responsible for running the shift. there's 2 lieutenants per shift, and then there's firefighters. So there's 7 members per shift. With that being said, with the contract that's currently in place, we have what we call the debit guy, the debit day. So every person on the department, except for myself and the fire marshal, has to work an extra 24-hour shift every 28 days. So every month, basically. So that person, his extra 24-hour shift is on a different shift, obviously, from his own. So he's the actual 8th man on the shift. So we have a 7-man shift with the debit guy makes 8-man shift.
All right. And again, you said you do that because if you have somebody call in, you're still at minimum manning with the 7.
Right.
So
I mean,
if 2 people call in, you don't have to call back.
so with the 8-man, obviously, with the 8 men, if somebody's on vacation for that day, that the debit guy would fill in for that spot. We're still at the 7. We don't have to call back. As soon as somebody calls, the second person is out, that's when we have to call back to get back up to the 7-man minimum.
Okay. Thank you for this. Anything else? Sherry?
Yeah, the only other question I had on the budget was, Bruce, the medical physicals, how, that seems like it continues to change, and I just wasn't sure if you could just explain what the increase to that line item was, which it's at. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but
I do.
16,000.
Yeah.
So we
So
approved 6 last year. I just wasn't.
right. So that was cut last year, I believe. Again, I didn't put in this year's budget, or last year's budget rather. But so this is something 2 years ago when I did the budget, 2.5 years ago, I asked for. It's something that should be done, in my personal opinion. It should be done annually by NFPA, which is what we follow. We're required to do it. It's a medical physical that's geared towards.
I remember you explaining on the tour that the guys get cancer more often and all that stuff, and it's a physical of them, right?
Right,
I just
exactly.
wasn't sure if there was an increase in the cost for the physicals, or
No.
if it was taken out and then we're just putting it back in, or.
It's so the 16 is pretty accurate. When I put in for it 2 years ago, we started doing it, and then COVID hit, and then Concentra, who is the company that does the physicals, just ceased and didn't reschedule any of the physicals. So we had some done. We got some done this year with the monies that we still had in the budget. So next year it's the 16. It's going to be right around the 16 to have everybody on the department get their physical.
Okay, thanks, Bruce.
Yep.
If I could add in that those physicals actually protect the town too. And I won't get into great detail on that, but that's the reason why the physicals are there. It actually protects the town, so.
No, respectfully, I put it in there to protect the guys, but obviously my opinion is, the benefit is it does benefit the
Well, I'll
town
just say
also.
that
Sure.
what I was told was that, for instance, somebody that may smoke cigarettes their whole life and then claim that fire damage to their lungs because of the smoke. I was told that that's why that was put in there, for things like that. So whether that's, I didn't really want to get it deep into it, but it's just my opinion
Sure.
that
Sure.
having them take these physicals, if they're severely overweight or something like that, it should be documented that, maybe the heart attack wasn't because of stress from the job, but was because of physical health. And
Right.
some of the long-term claims we've had against the town, where we pay for years and years and years for people out on disability. So that's what I understood when we first introduced having physicals for firefighters. Anybody else?
Just like to chip in on this one. I think that there definitely should be in there, and they should be having their physicals. And this is dear to me today because we lost a firefighter in Fall River, Paul Chippendale, about 4 years back, and it was all because of smoke inhalation and because he went for his physical. That's how they found it.
Yeah. Is there anything? Mike, go ahead.
So Chief, would you speak to the deputy chief and your request for that position?
Sure. Excuse me. So right now, like I just said a few minutes ago, the rank structure of the department, it's myself and then the captains, one captain per shift. There's no continuity of command if I'm not here. What would happen if I'm out for a week, if I'm away for a week, or if I get hurt, or for whatever reason, there's really, so the senior captain would have to step up and fill in for, which is exactly what I did. That's how I became the acting chief the couple times that I did. But then that just leaves the hole in the ranks, which has to be filled with overtime, etc. So this position would be, it would be a non-union position. They would be the second in charge, right under the chief. He would oversee basically all the operations in the department. It would allow myself to concentrate more on looking, administrative stuff, looking for and applying for grants. My position obviously is not just the fire chief, it's the EMA director in town. And as you can, I'm sure, well imagine right now, it's take that alone is taking up more than a full-time job. So he would be the next in charge. Like I said, he would help me run the day-to-day operations of the department, allowing me to concentrate more on administrative tasks.
Just a question. What hours would he work versus you?
It would be a Monday through Friday, a 40-hour week, a 42-hour week position. We would certainly work some hours together. That's not really, that could be determined later. If he wants to, work 2 weekend days and I would work 2 weekend days, and, just so there would always be a chief on duty. We certainly could work something out like that. But basically, it would be a Monday through Friday position.
Sherry.
Is that, so I know we're referring to him as chief and deputy chief. I don't see, has that already been calculated into one of these line items as the captain, or what?
Thought it was on the salaries.
And the salaries at the bottom.
Deputy
Right.
chief, the fourth from the bottom.
It would be an additional position,
Oh, I
Sherry.
see it. I see it now.
Additional position. That's right. That's exactly right.
While this is an anomaly, I can tell you right now that Chief Ramos has spent, and he's doing a very good job of trying to manage all aspects of the fire department's day-to-day operations. But as an EMA director, I have him out of town quite a bit, either getting trained or going over to the regional part of Bristol, to the state meetings up in province, whether it's related to these COVID issues. This whole COVID EMA issue has been daunting for us to get this vaccines off the ground here at the Tiverton High School. This would not have happened had it not been for the work he's been putting in out of town. He's been here every night with me trying to register people. These are all functions that are part of the EMA director's job that he is doing that are well outside of what he does normally as the fire chief. Having a deputy would have alleviated some of the issues of running that department. Again, we're not always going to have a pandemic. We're not always going to have these kind of crises and catastrophes, but there's a lot to running that department that most people don't understand. So all I can tell you is it's just, he's been putting in tremendous amount of hours trying to do what's right by our seniors, to make sure that they're getting their vaccines and doing all the right protocols, developing the plans. He's also writing grants. He's also looking at equipment replacements. He's also fighting with our vendors to make sure we can get our pumpers back on time. I mean, it's a daunting task, let alone the issues that he has to deal with 29 guys about their personnel issues and, you know, the things that go on in their lives. I mean, it's a lot to ask for one guy to manage all of that and do it all in 40 hours a week.
So because
Sherry,
of,
still up. I'm sorry, Mike. Sherry was up, then you're up. I'm sorry.
If he's got a question, I was gonna make a motion, realizing the town council and still hasn't, reviewed and talked about some of the salary stuff. I was gonna make a motion that we approve for the entire fire department 3310 account 5,701,540.
Second,
Let's finish discussion then.
Well,
you
you can.
still have
Mike.
discussion.
I know. Go ahead, Mike.
just a quick question, Chief. The captains that you have, they have no administrative responsibility regarding the personnel below them?
That was my question.
They do. They basically the day-to-day administrative functions of the department. They do some of the scheduling, fill in the overtime. They make sure that the roll call is incorrect in IMC. IMC is the computer program that we, our recording program. So they do have some, but there's so much that that is not just a day-to-day. So there's so many things that need to be done consistently. If you're working on one project, to have somebody that's there 2 days a week, they work 24-hour shifts. They're only there 2 days a week, but you can't extend a project months because you're trying to get the person that's in charge of that project in meetings and stuff. It's so difficult the way it works right now. Having somebody here Monday through Friday or on a more consistent basis would certainly help in that aspect.
Yeah, well, no, thank you for the explanation on the captain's roles. It's education on my part.
Yep, sure.
I guess I kind of felt the same, that we've got 2 lieutenants and a captain on each shift. It just seems that we have so much rank already on these shifts that those duties should be able to be broken down. In fact, if you're a captain, I would think that's the type of responsibility you'd want to pick up to show that you could step up to the chief's chair, because that's how you prove that you're a valuable employee, by doing those kind of staffs. I mean, I don't know what those captains do all day. I'm not going to presume that I do know, but I just know that we've had a deputy chief in the past, and the reason we didn't continue to have a deputy chief is because we didn't feel there was a need. I mean, and again, I don't know what you do day to day because I'm not there. I can only guess, but I know money's tight and we need 2 new employees, and this is probably not going to be the year for a deputy chief.
So
Just my opinion.
Yep, yeah, and I certainly respect that. So the captains during the day, they're responsible for, the training on the shifts. They're responsible for responding to all the calls that we go to. They're responsible for the calls and the actions of the guys on the shift on a day-to-day basis. So their administrative, the time they can commit to the administrative portions of the day that need to be done is small because of their scheduling inspections, like company inspections. They're scheduling their trainings. They're going out, they're doing the trainings. They're certainly not, and I've heard quite a few times over the years, those guys just they sit around and they play pool all day. We don't even have pool tables in the stations anymore. We haven't for years and years and years. So, and as far as the deputy goes, yeah, we did
That was the
have-
volunteers hanging out,
Yeah.
playing
they-
pool. That was back in the volunteers days. That's everybody hung out playing pool up there or whatever.
Right. So,
Till the
so
bell
those are
rang.
the days where we were doing 400, 500 runs a year. We're doing averaging between 9, I'm going to say 10, between 9 and 11 calls a day now. So it's quite different for sure.
Yes, Mike. And Sherry.
Do you have a job description prepared yet for the deputy chief? And are there job descriptions for the captains, lieutenants, et cetera?
I do. I don't know if I sent the actual job description over to the administrator or not, but I can certainly get that over to him.
Sherry.
Okay, so a couple of things. Tom, I'm gonna call on you to help me out here because I'm adding up. One, what I was saying is this is a preliminary vote, Bruce, just so you know. And I realize that there are some town councilors that have brought up some items that still have to be discussed. And that's why about the deputy chief position. So, I'm proposing I am proposing a thing, but Tom just told me my number was incorrect. I asked him to see if I was right, and I guess that number, Tom, is that my number was wrong? That's what I was looking at, the bottom lines for each section and adding those two numbers, Tom. The going to page 9, the 3,047,870, and the fire department salaries and all of that stuff. That's 2,653,670.
They're blended together.
Oh, they are blended together. So Tom, what was the number?
It's 394,000 plus 2,000,008. Oh, let me see. 2,000,006.
Tom gave me 3,047,870.
Yeah.
Right. That's
Correct.
correct.
Okay.
That's the grand total, yeah.
I'd like to amend my motion to approve fire for 3,047,870.
I'll second that.
I'd like to just before we vote, does it make sense to vote on this if we know that it's going to go back to the town council and then it may very well be changed significantly coming back to us? I know it's a preliminary vote.
Also, the purpose is for us to put our budget together. We're going to go back and look at this budget again, but we want to get something completed as quickly as possible and then make adjustments so that we can see where we are. This is a time issue.
Okay, but would a vote that we take now be binding if there's no further discussion at some point later?
No.
We are going to review this budget again. Once we realize what the tax, if we can get a handle on what kind of a tax rate we're looking at once we pass a budget, and then see, if we really want to, where we want to add. We also are going to be hearing from the council updates through Chris or Denise every meeting until the end. But the idea is to get our job finished, and that's to come up with a budget. And that's why I didn't want to waste time. I want to produce a budget and then make the adjustments in the end like we did last year.
I think, Mike, I had actually, what you're asking is we'll have the ability for any of us to ask for a revote on any of these line items if we want to change something.
Okay, thank you.
So just for clarification, just for edification, as it relates to the salary lines, everything above that 2,653,870 is contractual except for 2 items. That would be the deputy chief and the rotators. So even though you have a new item for continuing education for the chief, that is a contractual item. It's in his contract. So I don't want you to think it's that it's discretionary. Everything else above that is, all based on the IAFF contract or a personal services contract.
What was the other one besides the deputy chief that you said was
It's the
not?
deputy and the 2 rotators. So it's 196,607 is still discretionary that the council is still weighing in on.
Okay, we have a motion if you want to
Well-
move it.
Sherry, are you ready to, want to read your motion and then
Yes,
we'll
I'll
move
reread
to
it.
the vote?
So I'm making a motion to approve account number 3310, Fire Department, for 3,047,870, and I had a second from the vice chair, I think.
Correct.
All right, do we need to call roll or do we have unanimous consent?
Can't hear you, Dave, but
Sorry. Unanimous consent.
I think so.
Okay, hearing no objections, no further discussion.
Did you need a second? Did you have one?
You had a second. Sherry, I just wanted you please to reread your motion, the number, just so it's clear.
Yep, 3,047,870.
Okay,
Is that the number you get, Chris, as well?
Yep.
okay, I'm going to say the motion carries. I'll say thank you to the chief. Before you go, chief.
Before you,
Okay, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead. I'll finish up.
before you go, do you want him to speak about the capital items while you have them? You don't have to vote on them, but at least have.
No, I was just going to say, if he wants to talk on them, I appreciate it. I received your list and I'm looking at, things with 176,000 miles and things like that. So give us the bad news.
Well, so first of all, I want to apologize. I know I just got that to the administrator today. Has been.
I will get it
stated.
emailed off to the rest of you. I just didn't get a chance to get it off. Joe got a copy when he came in. That's.
Yeah. So what Mr. Souza has is it's a list of my apparatus and the engine hours, the mileage and stuff like that. So I can go through it really quick if you want. So do you see the equivalent miles there?
Yes.
So what that is, and just for everybody else that doesn't have the sheet. So what I did is I wrote down what the apparatus is, the year, the make, the mileage of the apparatus. On the 3 engines, I did the engine hours, and then I did what I'm calling the equivalent mileage. So with the big diesel trucks, and Mr. Souza, I'm sure you're well aware of this. It's kind of just like the police department always says, they have the cruisers, and the cruisers only have, 80, 90,000 miles, which is obviously quite a bit, but just them sitting in these road details, they only have, 70,000 miles on them, but they have untold amount of running hours. So the same thing happens with the big diesel engines. So the way it's figured out, the industry standard is for every, let me make sure I say this right, for every engine hour that's on the truck, you take that and you times it by 30. It's either 33 or 39, depending on who you talk to. So I use 36 right in the middle. So for every engine hour, you times that by 36, and that's the equivalent mileage for that vehicle. So with that being said, my engine 1 is a 2002 Ferrari. It has 185,000 miles on it. It has over 11,000 hours on it. So the equivalent mileage on that is over 400,000 miles. That's my oldest fire engine. My next one is a 2011. It has 164,000 miles on it. It has 10,000, almost 10,500 engine hours on it. Equivalent mileage on that is 375,000 miles on it. And then my next engine 2 is a 2013 Ferrari engine. That has 49,000 miles, a little over 49,000 miles on it, with 3,200 just over engine hours. So that has the equivalent mileage of 117,000 miles on it. I didn't do the equivalent, the engine hours and the equivalent miles on the rescues. A couple of them don't even have the engine. I mean, I'm sure we could plug it into the computer and get the engine hours on it, but they don't have the engine hour meter like the engines do. So my rescue one is a 2016. That's my oldest frontline rescue. It has 91,000 miles on it. My rescue 2 is the 2019, the one that we purchased 2 years ago. That has 36,000 miles on it. And then my oldest rescue, which is my reserve rescue, is a 2012 with 138,000 miles on it. And as everybody that was on the budget committee a few years ago, and it could be everybody remembers, we've had to put a lot of money into the rescues, or into the apparatus period, I should say, not just the rescues, just to keep them going. Right now, I'll finish going down my apparatus list. We have a squad truck, which responds to incidents that of long duration. It has some specialized equipment in it. It does not go on a lot of calls, but it's one of those pieces of apparatus that we have that once in a while we certainly need. What we did with that is we took an older rescue and used that as our squad. That's a 2007 with 2007 International with 176,000 miles on it.
Is that the one that sits behind Crandall?
That's like
In the
Crandall
tent?
Road. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
That has like the water rescue stuff in it too, doesn't it?
It does. So it has like specialty stuff, water rescue, ice rescue. It has during a fire, we'll bring it because it has all of our spare, not all, but most of our spare bottles for our air packs, things like that. That's why it doesn't get used all the time, but when you need it, you need it. So let me see. So our tanker truck, which is housed down in South Tiverton, that's a 2005 Kenworth. That has 17,500 miles on it. It's an older truck, but it's one of those trucks that, again, doesn't get used a lot. When you need it, you need it. It carries the water that we need. But that's in good shape right now. I'm not worried about that truck right now at all.
I remember buying that truck. I've been around too long.
We all say that sometimes, Mr. Souza, for sure. So the car one, the one that I drive is 2017 Tahoe with 55,000 miles on it. And the car that the captain drives is also, if you remember, a few years ago, we bought two at the same time, the two 2017s, that has 54,000 miles on it. And then my car 2, which is the car that the fire marshal has, that's a 2014 Chevy Equinox with a little over 81,000 miles on it. So I do want to say, so that's all the apparatus we have, minus the boats, the 2 boats that we have. We do not currently have a reserve engine. So when we have an engine go down, like we do right now, what we have to do is we have to use the tank truck as an engine. It does carry water. It does have a pump. It does have a hose, but that's about it. As close as it comes to a fire engine. It doesn't have the ladders. It doesn't have most of the equipment that we need we carry on our fire truck. So it's what we have to do right now to get by because we don't have a reserve engine. It's certainly less than ideal for sure.
Quite frankly, this week we had 2 of them down. The week before, I guess. And we actually had to borrow something from Portsmouth. They were kind enough to let us borrow something for a day till we could get by.
Yeah. So the engine that you were requesting to replace was engine 1?
So what? Correct. So that's a 2002.
Yeah.
Like I said, we've put a lot of money into that recently. I think it's a good running truck right now. It would make a great reserve engine. That's my plan, to get a new engine, put that one in reserve so we're not always trying to beg, borrow, and steal from other departments when we have mechanical issues.
We don't have an engine in reserve currently. Hold on, Dave, you're next.
We do not.
That one that
that's what I was just saying. When we do have an engine go down, the tanker has to step up and pretend to be a fire engine.
I was just thinking about the one that we put in reserve and the firefighters fixed it up. That's gone.
So that engine 5, unfortunately, that was my favorite engine that I've ever worked on. That's the guys did a great job restoring that. It certainly lasted for a bunch of years. It got us by as a reserve engine for a bunch of years, but it's the money that would have to be put in it now is it's cost prohibitive.
Yeah. Dave and then Sherry.
Yeah, Chief, this new engine that you would be purchasing would be a ladder truck.
So it's a fire engine with a ladder on top. It's a quint is what they call it.
Yes.
So it has everything that a fire engine has. It just has the addition of a ladder on top.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of pictures of them. Rick keeps putting them on Facebook. All the quints that are out there for sale. Okay,
Yeah.
I think we need one also. I agree.
No said, Dave.
Who keeps
Sherry.
putting them on Facebook? I haven't seen those, I guess. I missed it. I didn't hear, and maybe you just were gonna cover it in a minute, Bruce, but one, I wanted to say I will be emailing you because there are some budget committee members who are unfortunately doing site visits a little late this year. But we do have some members that would like to come see the fire department, and I encourage our members to go because it's really helpful to see his equipment up front and personal, and see the condition that all of it is in for yourself with your own eyes. And the second is maybe you just weren't hadn't gotten there, but I know that is that the Lucas chest compression, is that for 1 or 2?
That's for 2.
That's what I thought, because so that was the other thing I was going to say is that I will fight to get these for you this year because I've gone to the fire station and seen the old equipment, and if I have a heart attack, I want the new stuff, and I think everybody else in Tiverton does too.
Right. So, well, I appreciate that. The members certainly appreciate that. They're absolutely nice pieces of equipment, and it was in my budget before, and then it got cut out because of that 5-let. Yes, it was cut out by the administrator. Absolutely. So we just weren't quick enough to buy it, I guess, last time. But
well, and not during working hours, but I do have a pool table, and you're anytime you guys are welcome to come by and play me a pool.
Don't tell them that.
Thank you.
Okay. More questions? Anybody? Okay.
Great job, Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay warm.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 14, Town Administrator, suggestions for departments ready for scheduling.
So I did get a look at Sherry's email, drafting the minutes, the agenda for February 18th, and I'm fine with it. I think she did a good job putting it together.
She's always
done
on
a hell
top
of
of
a
things. Yeah, she's doing a great job.
Thank you.
Since Dan's not here, I had to make sure that got out.
Well, I think we should double Sherry's pay.
We all got, yeah,
They did that
I'll
to me
motion.
double zeros now.
Can I just ask one question?
Go ahead.
Did you say you were going to email me, or you already did email me about the site visits?
Honestly, Bruce, they are just commenting on how wonderful of a secretary I am, but I've emailed so many people, but I don't think I still have your email, so I'll get it from Chris. I think yours was one of the ones that I was looking for this week, because I didn't do secretary
I'll send it to you right now.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't think I emailed you yet, but I will
Okay.
be.
All right, I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss it, so I'll be looking out for it.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Anybody else?
All right, Chief.
Anybody else? Well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn then.
Motion
I'll
to
motion.
adjourn.
Second.
No objections?